Good evening and welcome everyone to our weekly guest spotlight here in Reclaim Your Space. I am happy to be here again and really excited to introduce you to a dear friend of mine and a fabulous coach, Jen Aly. She is a money and business coach for creative and holistic entrepreneurs. And as I get us set up here with the comments and making sure that we can engage with you guys on the comments in real time, Jen, let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got started.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, to be with y'all today or tonight. And so I became a coach in 2003. So I was kind of an early coach person. And then I had businesses on and off. I was an English teacher, all that kind of stuff. I did all kinds of things. And then I basically learned the hard way how not to do business and money. I had businesses in California. I was a professional organizer and I was a life coach, and I had no clue about business, marketing, sales, or managing money or doing basic bookkeeping. I was completely resisting all of that, and I filed bankruptcy because of it. And so then years later, I finished teaching after a few years, burned out on that, and I really wanted to start a jewelry design business. So I did that here in Asheville, North Carolina, and I got back in touch with my creativity for the first time in many years. And accessing that was such a big deal for me, and just learning to trust it and trust that it wasn't going to go away. It was going to run out. And then I started coaching again after I was around artists all the time. I heard before that the thing that makes you angry is the part of your purpose. And I would get frustrated in conversations and overhearing conversations with artists that were just about scarcity. Because as a coach, I would hear the mindset stuff and it would just break my heart. And so I started coaching again and creating money programs for artists and creatives. And now I've kind of gone back to merge into my original business training years ago, which is for holistic practitioners too. And what they have in common is that I am both a holistic practitioner as a coach and an artist as a jewelry designer and creative. But we're more right-brain people, and bridging the gap between that creative, free, intuitive side of ourselves and the business, money, marketing, sales piece is something that needs to happen for everyone. And my purpose is really about bridging that gap for people, for those who want to thrive in business, to help change the relationship with it, to reframe the things they resist and change the relationship with it so that they can fully step into it and create more abundance and impact in the world.
So powerful. Oh, I have so many things that I'm feeling about this already. Such a good topic. So thank you, Jen, for being here. Thank you everyone who's watching. I'm going to just recap if anyone's just hopping on. This is Jen Aly, and she is a money and business coach for creative and holistic entrepreneurs, as you've been hearing. It's a super exciting topic for me, specifically because exactly what you said, that story, that scarcity story that permeates the creative and the artistic world drives me bonkers, because I'm like, no, your art gets to be in the world and you get to also thrive in your life. Like, you get to eat, you get to have a life,
Absolutely.
So yes, just want to invite everyone watching, as we go through, this is going to be a really juicy conversation. Share in the comments. We'll be watching the comments. We'll be answering questions as we go along. We already have a few people watching. It's so good to have you here. Cindy, Evelina, Violetta, Elise, Ana Paula, nice to have you here. Thank you. Evelina says she really liked your TEDx talk, Jen.
Awesome.
Violetta says, hello, loves. This is a beautiful explanation, Jen.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive in. Oh, there's so much. All right, here's what's coming up for me as where I would love to start, but just take it away from here, right? So what's coming up for me is something you said about you get to put your work into the world, right? I've heard a lot of artists say this thing of I don't care about if I can eat, or all I want is for my work to be in the world. And I'm kind of I understand that, but the two are really related, right? One is foundation for the other. So talk to me again, bridging that gap.
Yeah, because really, unless you're independently wealthy, or unless you're off the grid and you don't have to make money at all, then you depend on having money to live. And if, when that's the case, which it is for most people that I know, um, in order to keep making more art and to do what they want with their art, they need to have an audience. They need to have people who are buying it. And same thing with healing, because a lot of healer kind of spiritual people, we have a tendency to, I feel, if we feel guilty for receiving money, and so it's like, how do you get to where money's not a bad thing, period? And that idea of like, I don't need that, that's an identity piece that's based in scarcity, and it's a stereotype that is way past its due date. Because there are a lot of artists and healers who are completely thriving. It's just a matter of if you're willing to do what it takes to make it happen.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the more you get aligned with what it is you're offering, how you're offering it, who you're offering it to, how you're promoting it, and you don't have to compromise. You have to learn some stuff, but you don't have to compromise who you are to be able to do something. Because that's what, my TED Talk is about, the business as a creative process. Like, you get to create and co-create your business just like you create your art. So how, it's like entrusting that process, trusting the creative process, that it's leading you into creating more of something, but you have to commit to it. Like, you have to commit to having the business, thriving in the business, getting your work out there, to make it happen. And usually it means getting support and learning a lot.
I love that. Getting support and learning a lot. And would you agree, this is a sense that I get, healing a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Healing a lot. I love, like, what you brought up, what kind of sparked for me is this ick factor that a lot of people have around money. Like the ick factor around marketing and money. Like, I'm not going to be what
it's sales. Who cares? Don't forget sales.
Oh, and sales. Oh, God.
Yeah. And one of the things in my TED Talk that people talk about the most, that in my teachings too, they were like, oh my God, this slide is what I want to see, because it's like where I reframe money as oh God, what is it? Money is basically a tool, and it's a way to get freedom. Marketing is visibility and education, and sales is service and offering, something like that.
Right.
So it's really about
that again, because that's like a really powerful moment. I want to highlight it. All right. Money is a tool, and freedom. Freedom. Marketing.
Visibility. And education.
Oof. And then
sales is service and connection even too. I can't remember what words I used on my slide, but it's, all these things can be seen as such different things. It's just a matter of how you do them. And our culture has such skewed views, and we have such skewed experiences with sales.
Right.
We have experiences that have completely skewed us, and I haven't even shared this yet, but I totally got scammed online recently. And it triggered so much in me, because I'm not that person who gets scammed, because I'm really clever and I'm really careful. But this was like a total scam. And I mean, I took care of it. It's fine. But it was like, wow. And it brought up that the resistance to marketing and not trusting businesses and sales and all that stuff, and and that's what our experience is. And we get sales calls all the time. They're completely obnoxious, but you don't have to do it that way. There's ways to do sales and marketing and business that are not sleazy. They're not misaligned. They're not, like the experiences that we've had. We get to create something different, and there are ways to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And like being in your integrity. It's really interesting, because when I was working in, for the past 14 years, been working in the remodeling business, right? We own our own company, we built it. And about 3 or 4 years ago now, I took over the position of sales from my partner. He needed a break. And I was like excited to learn something new. And it was one of the most fun things that I started to learn about. Like, I just picked up one book and was reading it, and it was like so aligned for me, that this concept of like, there is something that you have to offer, and there's someone who like wants that thing so badly, and like you're doing them a service by giving it to them, but like there's so many blocks between those two meeting, and some of them we're putting out, right? We're putting out the blocks. That's what it feels like, right? It's like, so how do we like get our blocks out of the way and then support them in getting their blocks out of the way? But to do it in integrity is a really powerful piece, and I think, you know, that really resonates for me.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And it's radical. You know, it's radical in our culture to say, okay, I'm gonna have a business. I'm going to express myself authentically. I'm going to do sales in a way that really serves people and that's aligned in integrity. And I'm going to create a business that is creating value in innovative ways that people are going to respond to.
And this idea that I can be a thriving artist or holistic entrepreneur and not feel guilty about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, it's so interesting because it's all connected, because, you know, you have you have the business, you have the product or the service, and then you have the marketing of putting it out there, and then you have the sales process, and then you have receiving the money. And the thing is that if mindset and money blocks are there, you just put a kink in this process, and you just stop the whole thing. So that's why I start with people with money mindset, and I have a basic money mindset program, because I'm like, this is where it's at. Like getting through all this stuff, unpacking like what beliefs you have and clearing those and replacing them and seeing different ways of doing things and really changing your relationship with money. And, you know, I talk to people about how if you and money have a relationship, how close are you? You know, how much time do you spend together, and how clear are you on what's going on with them? And, you know, like it's really a relationship. And so how do you cultivate that and heal that and remove the things that we have in our heads around what's bad about money and rich people and all those things? It doesn't mean that some rich people are not total jerks and greedy. It just means that money is a tool. Money is a tool. We can do whatever we want with it, just like a hammer. You can, you know, build something or hurt someone with a hammer. Money's the same way. It's just a tool. It's neutral. It's just energy.
Oh, so I'm gonna check in with the comments, and then there's like everything sparking for me right now. Okay, so Violetta says she's aligned, trust the process, beautiful, committed action. Sale is service and offering, marketing, visibility, and education. Love it. Yes. And
Awesome.
It's interesting, as you said those, I was like, oh, the visibility. Like if we have a fear of visibility, of course we're gonna have a fear of market. Like it's like all of these things like tie in, and sometimes it just takes another word to see it from another angle, right?
Exactly.
So to really shine that light of awareness. So here in Reclaim Your Space, and so it's coming up for me, I teach like clearing clutter to open up to flow. And that's exactly what I heard you saying, right? Anything that's unconsciously accumulated in our system, in our beliefs, it's that kink, right? Or like I think of, like,
exactly. Stagnant energy.
Stagnant energy.
Yeah.
And it's only when we start to like shine light on them and see what they are, and then question, like drop in the questions of like, is this even mine? Like, do I even believe this, right? And so beautiful, like that freedom that you're creating, that flow, right? It's the same process. And I say this all the time. This is why you're here. This is why I created this weekly spotlight, because this is like a team. We're like a team. We're all heading in the same direction. Like freedom of self-expression is my thing. Like really creating space for that.
Yeah.
And the freedom can only happen when we know what's holding us back, when we reconnect with what is actually driving this behavior that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's both like, what do I want and what's holding me back from that thing, you know? Absolutely. You know, and I think about, you know, when I think about like creating spaces and like moving physical things, when I used to be a professional organizer too, and my own experiences, like I think about that as a manifesting tool. So you're clearing out the things that no longer support you, no longer serve you. You're taking them, get rid of them. What reminds you of your ex-boyfriend, or what, you know, like dusty, whatever, you know, just like getting rid of the things that are not completely yeses and are not functional. And then creating the space the way you want it to be to help you evolve into who you are. Like creating an environment that's about who you're becoming, you know. And I read something recently about how, you know, your bedroom is such a big deal in like creating an abundant vibe. And I just got, last year I got a new bed. This year I got a new bed, last year a new mattress. And I just got these really amazing curtains. I bought 5 different sets of curtains. And the 5th one, which were like cost the same as all the other ones put together, but they're the curtains. They're the curtains. And every time in the morning I like, you know, open them up and I close them at night, I'm like, oh, the curtains. And they're a color I could not have imagined, and I can't even describe to you. It's like metallic gold. I can't describe it, but it's not too gold. It's like this reddish tint too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a rosy gold kind of, and I didn't know they existed, so I couldn't have manifested them in a way of like, I want this. I just knew what I didn't want, and I knew kind of wanted this and this, and then that these existed was amazing. And so it helps me to create an environment where I love everything I'm looking at. Yeah. And, you know, like everything you see here, like this is a stained glass. This is a painting I saw in a restaurant that I had to have, and it actually has a 3D dimension to it. My friend made this lamp as a pottery, and like I just have to have that because beauty fuels me. And, you know, and that beauty of like creating things in my environment that are huge for me, that are symbolic for me, it helps me feel abundant and feel prosperous, you know, because if I don't have that feeling, then, you know, and I've had experiences lately where I moved to Asheville 7.5 years ago from Hawaii. Okay. And I didn't have much stuff, right? Because I moved from Hawaii. And I still have had furniture that I got for free or off Craigslist when I first moved here. Mm-hmm. I just painted a shelf that was heinous. It was so bad. It was like this red and black paint. Part of it wasn't painted, and I covered it up with a cloth, but I just painted it solid, like dark brown to match the wooden furniture in my room. And it's like, oh, thank God. Like those kinds of feelings of like, if it's not a yes, then either get rid of it or change it. And the same thing with spending money. Like if it's not something that you want to do or that you feel like is aligned for you, don't spend it. And, you know, a lot of people's limiting beliefs around money come from what they think they have to do to get money. Like, I have to compromise myself. I have to manipulate. I have to be passive. I have to, like, all these things. And so there's like this major transition between making money as an employee and making money as an entrepreneur, because it's a totally different dynamic with money. Yeah. And you have to be a lot more receptive and clear, and you have to price things and all those kinds of things. So it's a whole different level of relationship with money. That was kind of a total like random, like everywhere thing, but
in all places, and it landed right at the
awesome.
It was perfect and beautiful. And back to the comments, Violetta saying, change your relationship with money. That's like, how close is your relationship? How close do you have a relationship with your money? Creating freedom and flow. She's asking, what do you do when old beliefs about money are coming back?
Yeah, you face them, you name them, and then you negate them. And you feel them, you know, because if there's a belief, there's a feeling there. And so really letting yourself feel it. And it's usually self-worth, self-esteem stuff from like stuff we made meaning from when we were kids. So you have to replace it with another belief. So you take it and you do the opposite. Byron Katie's the work is really good for that kind of thing, because it helps you take that belief and then just transform it and shift energy completely. So I recommend that as a resource. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of healing your relationship with money, because the other aspect of Reclaim Your Space that's been almost more evolving for me since I started it, this idea that we're healing our relationship with our home and with the objects in it. And that some of the process isn't about getting rid of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's about reconnecting with what we already have and the abundance we've already created for ourselves. And so I've been watching my clients move through this process and just really like, oh, wow, I have so many beautiful clothes. Like, oh, wow, look, right? And I mean, what you said
Right.
about like only having things in your space that you love or that bring you joy, like that is like, that's my thing. I'm like, you are the sovereign of your space, but nothing is allowed in unless you want it to be there and it
Yeah.
brings you joy. But talk to us about, because I also have, you know, I've seen this in my own experience and in some of my clients as well. There's this, for me, sometimes there's like an avoidance. Like, I'm just not going to look at the money and then it'll just take care of itself and I don't have to think
Yeah.
about it, right? So how do
Yeah.
we reconnect? How do we
Right.
heal that?
So I have a great analogy for this one that really helps people. So imagine that you're on a boat, and imagine that you want to get somewhere on that boat. So that's your vision, your goals in life are to get somewhere on this boat, to go to this one destination A, right? And you don't know how much gas you have. You don't know how much, you don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know, depending on what kind of boat you have. You don't know if you have a leak in the boat. You don't know how much provisions you have. You don't even know the capacity of the people on the boat who are working on the boat, the crew. So without clarity, you're literally just like going in the dark, you know? So the thing about clarity is, even if it's not pretty, you know how far you can go, and you can plan for that based on, you know, your first level of trajectory toward that goal. So it gives you the power to be a leader in your own, you know, your own vision creation, to say, okay, well, I'm right here, and this is how much fuel we have. This is what the weather's going to be like. And you can't predict everything. Of course, you never can. But to get clarity is priceless. It actually is a tool to freedom. Because once you have clarity, then you can sense like, okay, this is where I'm at. It's like you have a map and you're like, okay, I am here. Without that I am here piece, it's hard to go anywhere because you don't know where you are. And so the clarity piece is the key to freedom and getting to where you want to go. You may not be as far as you had hoped, but you know where you are. And so you know what it's like to get there, or what it's going to take to get there. And you know that what you're going to need to get there.
Right. And then you can resource yourself. You can get the support that you need. You can get the
Exactly.
education. I love that piece about education. I think there's a lot around, well, I just want to reiterate what you said. Clarity is necessary for freedom. It's shining the light. It's like turning on the light and looking. That's the first step before we can make our strategy. Before we can take the necessary steps, before we can even know what the next step is. That makes total sense.
And not to discredit it, because it takes a lot of courage to look at it, especially if you haven't before. And I used to be the queen of that. Like before I filed bankruptcy back in many years ago, and I was first doing coaching business, I would barely look at my numbers. I would just get by. I wouldn't do my bookkeeping for my business until the following April. And I would have somebody else do it. And I was just like, so like, oh, I don't have time for that. And I was just so resistant to this stuff. So if I can do this, where I love spreadsheets now, and I use spreadsheets and planning my numbers and planning my spending plan and stuff as a tool for manifesting. It's like, okay, I want to be able to spend this here. So I'm going to put that right here. And when I get the money, I'm going to put it in my little thingy here. It's like I get to use it as a tool. It's a visioning tool for creating what I want instead of a hindrance.
That is beautiful. And this idea too that there's no judgment. It's all neutral, right? That like wherever that we are on the map, like that's just information.
Yeah,
That's all.
exactly.
I think a lot of times, at least in my own experience, I've like heaped on these layers of judgment. I should be farther along, or I was so far ahead and then I fell behind again, and like all of these stories, right?
And we all do that. We've all done it 1,000 times, up and down and all around, and different cycles of transformation, and things fall apart and things go away and things come back. And I'm a money coach, and sometimes I'm like, how can I be a money coach? Because it happens for me too. It's just like, how do I stay clear in the relationship and make conscious decisions and all those kinds of things. And it's that simple. And the thing about the not seeing it as not neutral and judging it, because we associate money with success, and we associate our identity or, you know, around money and success. And we also, the shame piece is huge. I just listened to a great podcast by Barry Tesler, who wrote The Soul of, she wrote The Art of Money. And she has this one about money shame. It's great because she talks about how everybody feels money shame, no matter how much, if you have a ton of money or you have no money, you feel money shame because people have it because it's such a big trigger in our culture.
Right. It's just deeply ingrained everywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And shame is like the lowest vibration of energy. So it's like and shame takes three things, and Brene Brown's work says this. It's it's secrecy. Crap, I'll have to look it up. It's really good though, because it's like, you know, that's one reason why talking about money is so valuable, because it breaks that cycle. It breaks that like feeding the whole shame thing.
Right, because we can go into these shame spirals. Yeah.
Yeah, so Brene Brown says if you put shame in a petri dish, it would need three things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. And what other thing is there more secrecy, silence, and judgment about than money? People talk about sex 5 times more, or way more times than about money. And so it's like just talking about money is radical.
Yes. Oh, I love all of it. Oh, so good. Yeah, talking about money. It's like, I've seen this play out, right? The people I know who have the least amount of money and the people I know who have the most amount of money both seem to have a similar level of shame.
Yeah. It's not a numbers thing, you know? And neither is prosperity and abundance, because I mean, it is, so basically there's some facts about happiness and money. Like once you hit $70,000 in the US, like you're not going to be much happier based on money. So more money after 70K doesn't make you much happier. It's not a thing, because you have your basic needs met. You know, no matter, you know, and then unless you live in like San Francisco, maybe, or whatever.
New York, you know.
Right. Yeah. And then, okay, where was I going with this? So, okay, and then there's another thing about how only 10% of our happiness is based on external circumstances. Right? I mean, because how much of my happiness is in here, you know, and like my chemistry, my brain, and you know, it's such a myth that
we make about the external circumstances.
Yeah. Because we're fed this story of like, you have, you know, to be successful, to be functional in society, to whatever, you're this, and this way. It's like that thing in Untamed where she talks about chasing the filthy bunny or something, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Like how many filthy bunnies are we like tamed to chase? And having more money is one of those things. And I'm not one of those coaches. I just wrote an article about this last week. I'm not one of those coaches who's like, okay, so I wrote this article that was about how some coaches like project their own goals onto their clients. And they say you're playing small and you need to make $1 million. And I think that's manipulation. And so I am like defending the client's vision as the leader of the relationship with the coach and the client. So yeah. And so it's like, okay, you get to say how much money you want to make. I'm not going to project cultural bullshit on you. So it's like, how can you own your vision of prosperity? Because it's different for everyone. There's not this cookie cutter picture that we all would be happy in. There are some people's vision of like happiness that would be utter hell for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. And I think that this is a really, it just brings us back to sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
I love that in your coaching style. It's like reflect, like just turning them back to like their own sovereignty. Like, what do you want? Like, what is it that you want? I'll bring my resources here to support you in creating it. That's how the design work that I've always done has been like that. And I've seen so many architects and designers, their own big ego, and they're like, here is what you need to do in this space, you know? And it's like, no, this is your home. This is your sovereign space. Like, what do you want to create here?
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. There's no one way to do it.
And what's functional for you too, in that case. It's like, what is functional? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. It's so fun how there's these parallels, right? They're like, they're endless. And it just brings us back to this concept, right? That how we do one thing is how we do everything. That when we start to build these muscles in one area, they can start to translate over to other areas. And I think what I find really fascinating is that, I guess I want to bring it back to the healing piece, where we dive in, like our way in to what I call like the back door of our unconscious mind.
Yeah.
Our way in probably is related to, this is a hunch that I have, I'm sort of testing it out, probably related to the particular kind of trauma that we had or that we've experienced in our life, right? Like where we're the most disconnected is probably where we need to heal the most. So I have people who come to me because it's like they can see in their physical space that like there's something not working, right? And I imagine with you, it's like there's something just not working in my finances. I don't understand what it is, like, right? And like it's the same with like fitness or nutrition, or like there's all these different ways in, and it's just like your own personal experience, I guess. Or I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, when you said that about like your biggest wound or whatever, I think most people have money wounds of some kind, either rich or poor. I've heard every kind of story. People who are rich, who their parents lost money when they were this age or that age, or divorced or like whatever, and then they didn't have money, or, you know, being poor and then being identified as the poor kid in school and having to overcome that identity. Like all kinds of money stories I've heard from people, and like really interesting money stories that people learn things from that you can never imagine. Like just such interesting moments in people's lives from my money program where it's like, wow, like I could never have made that up, because people can make meaning out of things that you can never, you know, the parents would never imagine the kids would make that meaning, you know? And the fact that we don't talk about money in our families, and we're not taught how to deal with money or how to use it, is such a big deal. But when you said that, I thought about astrology too. I thought about Cryon, because Cryon is like, what is your main wound? It's like
the one that keeps coming back around, right?
Right. Like, what is your wounded healer kind of thing? Whereas, like, what is that about for you? You know? And I think that money and our spaces can reflect other kinds of wounds as well. Now that I think about it, I had this client in California years ago that was an organizing client, and he had this cute little house in Oakland. And I remember there was this room that was like the throw everything in it room. And we did the feng shui, and that was like his family. And he had this really jacked up stuff with his family. So I was like, okay, like, do you want to work on this? Do you want to change your relationship with your family and, you know, honor that reflection in this space? And what would that look like? And he created a really amazing music room, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so talk about healing, and it was like this great reflection of this space, you know. And you know, and so, okay, another big piece of all this is like, you know, one of my favorite money books is called Money's Not the Problem, You Are. And the main premise is that you don't have a money problem, you have a receiving problem. And so it's like, yeah, okay. So it's a big deal. It's like, okay, how do I let myself receive the money for what I'm giving, or, you know, whatever form that looks like, and trusting that, you know, trusting that it's enough, trusting that it's not with any kind of like weird energy or agreements or anything. It's just receiving.
Oh yes, it's so wonderful how these synchronicities like just weave in, right? Like just earlier today, I was doing some deep dive energy work, and there was this moment where I was like, I needed to, like, it was too much. I needed to step out of my body, and just like, and the person I was working with was like, just let your authentic wisdom do the work, and you just be back there, just relax. And I was like, what came up so fast was like, but then I'm receiving from like what is she gonna want back from me? And he's like, That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Just be with that, right? It's like this idea that like of like the strings attached, or like this sense of obligation or needing to repay it, and oof, like what would it feel like to just
Mm-hmm.
receive?
Yeah.
Trust the receiving. It's like
Mm-hmm.
big.
Allow it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big piece actually, because that also goes back to the self-worth, piece, because that's really what's underneath all of the limiting stuff is self-worth stuff, because we've made things believe things. We let ourselves believe things about past experiences. And we've, and my TED talk about this too, about how in school creativity is not super valuable.
Right.
Like there's no standardized test on it. It's an elective. All this stuff is elective. Like, it's not respected. Yeah, it's not science or math, or it's not the things in the standardized test. And so if we were creative kids, or whichever kid is creative, of course, too.
Mm-hmm.
But if we lean more toward that than the left brain things, then that impacted our self-worth as well. And now we're trying to say, I'm going to use my healing arts and my art or whatever to create value and money in the world. Like, to reclaim that value on our creativity is so huge. It is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's healing and it's life changing, because it's something that reclaiming is like such a big deal.
Oh,
And it gives us our power back so we can create more.
absolutely. I think that is, yeah, I mean, that's like such a deep root, and that's one that like I feel so passionate about. Just the way the education system devalues creativity is just like heart-wrenching to me, because how are we going to move into, like, how do we solve the problems of the world that has not yet come? Like, how do we solve, like, one of the things I will say, like, just completely like non-political statement about how this entire situation right now, this pandemic, has been handled. To me, there's just such a lack of creativity.
Innovation. It's coming though.
I hope it's coming. I'm very
coming.
hopeful that it's coming. But so far, it's just been like, why are we just trying to shove like the round peg in the square, like whatever.
Yeah. All that's dying. That concept and that old stuff is dying. That's why it's coming up so strongly. But the next thing that's happening, the next levels, are innovation. Like, how could it not be, right?
But we
So
need
innovation is coming. It's already happening, really, because people are having to change things and do what works. And what works is completely different than it was a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of beauty in that. And I think that reclaiming of the worth, right? I've heard so many creative people be like, I'll just rather do it for free just to have my work out there. And it's like, but that doesn't actually work. It doesn't work on so many levels, because if you do it for free, people aren't going to value it. If you do it for free, like, if you haven't invested in getting the work out there, people aren't even going to find it. There's just so much stuff.
If they don't value it, nobody else is going to either. It's like charging too little for your services as well, And the visibility piece, I had this one client years ago, and she said, she's like, I think my marketing plan has been kind of like parking a used car for sale at the end of a dead end street. And I was like, I have to be able to use that, because that's amazing. Because it's like, okay, if you want to sell a car, what do? You blast it everywhere. You put a sign on it, you drive it around, you park it somewhere visible. And we don't do that with our work. If, when we have all this stuff on top of our value and our worth, and these fears, and so it's like, okay, how do you take steps to just like stretch into that? And how do you look at other people and see what they're doing and see what you like and what you don't like, and then do what you like, model that.
Right, what feels good, and seeing all like that there's immense possibility. And like you said, I love this concept of using your creativity to create the marketing plan for your creative work. That's amazing. Yeah. And it's so funny, because when you said that about the car, there's this car that's been parked on the corner of a massive intersection, and I've been passing it for months, and it's really cute. It's a little Volkswagen Bug, and I'm like, I kept having this thought, I want to buy this car. And every time I drove by it, like, the sign is like this big, right? And it's like, I'm driving by like this, and so like I had to like, after months of saying I want to buy this car to myself, I had to like actually pull my car into the little parking lot right next to it, go up close, take a picture of like the faded out phone number so I could get information on the card. It's just like, it's still there.
That's a great example of saying you're visible, but not having a call to action or a way for people to contact you. It's like doing the it's like doing something without real marketing too.
Right, without the plan.
It's like without a strategy or without a way to people contact you, or just sabotaging the process somehow because you don't complete it all the way. You're just kind of like throwing it against the wall and seeing if it sticks, or you don't really want to sell the car. Like, and I've started making paintings, and I don't want to sell any of them yet, but I might eventually. And it's such an interesting thing because when I first started making paintings, since the pandemic hit, I hadn't painted in 15 years, much, just a little bit here and there. And so, but I got a whole new acrylics, and I like created a new studio area, and I was like, okay, this is real. And I painted a few paintings, and it's been so good. And it's been so good not to have to market it and all that kind of stuff or share it yet, because it's my process and I get to have that. So, for the jewelry business, my creativity was all about like putting it out there every time, So you get to declare which aspects of your life you do want to market and sell and which ones you don't. You don't have to.
Right.
But the thing is, like, either you have a hobby or you have a business. And if you're lying to yourself about having a business because you're not doing marketing and sales and making a profit, then it's a hobby. So it's kind of like you get to choose either one, and it's draining to keep on doing the hobby, the business, calling it a business without actually making it one. And, then people get to this point in their businesses where they've hit a plateau on their earning and they know they need to go to the next level. And that's a lot of times where my clients come in because they're like, okay, it's going, right, but they don't have momentum yet. They want to get momentum. Because they're at a point where it's like, okay, yes, it's running, things are going, but they want to get momentum and they want to up their income level. And that's where I come in. And so it's so interesting to see these different levels of, experiences people have and what's possible at each level.
Right. I love that. And I love how you sort of presence that, because that was my next question was, I also hear this come a lot, which is, well, if it would kill the joy of it if I turned it into a business, my creative work. But it's also the only thing I want to be doing forever. Right? Like you can't, like, how do you have both? You can't have both.
Yeah. I mean, and that's tricky, and it's sometimes it's true. Like, right, the jewelry business, I'm selling my jewelry business now after 8 years. And so, it's like, okay, like that has run its course. And now I want to do more writing and coaching and, painting for fun. And you get to decide that, like, because there's some truth to that, because once you start making things that are repetitive, or whatever, like for me, it was jewelry. Okay, I'm going to make 30 of these things right now, like, it's a different relationship than I had this idea, I'm going to create this visual thing. Unless you can get other people to make things for you. Right. So it depends. There's so many factors to that conversation. But it's tricky because we'd have to talk to specific people about the relationship there, because it is a relationship thing. You're changing the relationship. You're saying, let's get married. Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, well, we're getting close to the end of our time together, so what I want to just make sure is that if you have any final thoughts you want to share, words of wisdom, anything like that, please do. And then also be sure to let everyone know how to connect in with you if they're in.
Yeah, I guess, the pieces about the relationship with money and cultivating that, and really allowing yourself the possibility of receiving more are the biggest things. And then also the thing that I didn't do was I didn't get support in my business for a long time. So get support, learn some stuff. It can be, there's a billion different forms of that. Those are the biggest things. Yeah. And then as far as getting in touch with me, I actually have a gift for people who would like it. It's a money makeover kit. It's a 3-part kit they can get via email. And it's a money manifesto. It's a printable yellow and purplish sheet of paper that has these amazing affirmations on it that help you remember the prosperity mindset. A video, it's half an hour of a workshop. It's a money mindset makeover, and a really great 2-page list of limiting beliefs to overcome and affirmations to replace them. So it's kind of good to play with those and journal and see what you want to unpack there. So yeah, and I'll post that below when I get online.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. That's so generous. And I invite anyone watching live, or if you're watching the replay, let us know with the hashtag replay. Take Jen up on this generous offer. There's a lot of value invested there. And thank you, Jen. Thank you so much, like, for being here. And for
My pleasure. This was so fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching. Stay tuned next week for another guest spotlight.